Let's face it, many people love to dive right in and start tinkering around with new applications. Stingray is an enticing program. It's understandable why jumping in is so tempting. But let's spend a few minutes covering some of the basics of the Stingray UI, and this will set the stage for some fun and productive exploration on your part. The Stingray UI is divided up into several key regions. The biggest one and the most obvious one is the viewport. This is our stage. This is where everything is happening. This is where we see all the content that we're adding and the experiences that we are creating for our viewers. Things that you can do in the viewport: you can adjust your rendering modes, see different types of materials, different types of tools. This is where you will choose your cameras if you have any cameras present in the scene. This is where you can show things that are in the viewports, like your grid or your gizmos. And these are where you can access your viewport options, where you can set your field of view and your near and far ranges. Over on the left-hand side is the toolbar. The toolbar is where you can access different types of tools like move, rotate, scale, and select. Although for the most part, those are actually done within the viewport. This is where you can choose the place tool when you're actually adding new assets into the scene. This is where you'll set your grid and snap settings, your angle snaps, and your sub-object mode. Over on the right-hand side of the screen are all of your different Explorer windows. So for example, when you select something, this is where you'll see all of your scene hierarchy, and you'll be able to select things directly within here. If there are any lights or any other types of objects in the scene, those will all be presented in this dialog box. Below it, you have the property editor. This is where you can gain access directly to different aspects of each one of the units within Stingray to change its settings. You'll notice that it changes depending on what you have selected up in the Explorer. To the right of the Explorer tab is the Create tab. This is where you can actually create specific things that will be in your Stingray scene. You can create simple primitive objects, various types of helpers, cameras, and lights, all directly within Stingray. They don't always have to come from 3ds Max. Moving to the lower half of the screen, you have a couple of different tabs down here. The most prevalent one is the Asset Browser. This is where you're going to spend a lot of time when you're working in Stingray, because this is how you're going to access all of the different types of content that you create for your projects. You have a scene hierarchy here on the left-hand side, and then you have this large window in here that is resizable depending on how many folders that you have in here. And trust me, you may end up getting a lot of folders in there. If you right-click in this folder, this is where you can actually create new folders and import assets directly within here. But we'll cover importing of assets a little bit later. The next window that you see over here, a little bit more to the right, is the Asset Preview window. When you're creating or bringing in assets that are going to be on your stage in your main viewport, you can actually preview them here without actually having to drag them into your scene. So if I have a model here, I'll go ahead and choose a stool model. You can see that that model appears here, and I'm able to inspect the object before it actually gets moved into the scene. You'll notice that in each part of the user interface, next to any one of the tabs, you have a plus sign. This is because you can really customize the Stingray UI to work the way you think. So if you want to organize the UI in a different way that's presented by default, you have that choice. In the upper right-hand corner, you have access to your help file. This will give you quick access to answer those burning questions about whatever it is that you're doing in Stingray. Across the top, there are two drop-downs that are really important to understand. The first one that I'm going to talk about is actually the window drop-down. The window drop-down and the plus tab are very similar in that they give you the ability to add different windows to your user interface. So for example, if I want to bring up a new level viewport or a level flow or a new explorer, I can do that from the window drop-down. But I can also do some of that from the plus sign tab. The window drop-down has things organized in a little bit more specific fashion. It also gives you access to some of the external applications that come with Stingray, like Scaleform Studio, Wise Audio, or Navigation Lab. It also gives you access to different things for animation and lighting. The Create dropdown also mimics the Create tab, but gives you the option to add a couple of extra things in terms of reflection probes or different types of navigation settings. It's pretty easy to find things in Stingray once you know how the UI is set up and how everything fits together.